What is, in fact, Recognize app?
Recognize app is a social employee recognition reward software. We help companies have great culture through systematic appreciation of their employees and their wins of the company.
Today, I'm going to be the one asking the very dumb questions, Alex. Don't get me wrong, right? It's just to understand and to be able to foresee what could be the questions of the listeners. So how does that work in practice? Who feeds the platform with data? Is it HR? Is it anyone?
First, we work with HR to get the users into it through usually an HRIS sync, like Workday or something like that. And at that point, you really want to enable the managers. So it's really a way for managers to be reminded and to easily be able to recognize their employees as well as the peer-to-peer. And it also allows the managers to go and view, like in, let's say, a one-on-one or a performance review, all of the recognitions that an employee has received, right? All those positive wins they've accomplished. And then, we often use AI to then summarize that information to make it digestible. But really should be the managers who should be driving the program because HR can't be everywhere.
So you allow not only managers, but also peers or anyone in the company to recognize someone in the company.
Exactly. And we use badging to be able to set up enterprise permissions. So certain types of recognition that are associated with certain badges, the badges indicate who can send them, how much are they worth money-wise, how often can they be given out or received, all these kinds of controls so that you can have maybe an IT program, you could have a sales program, all through using a badging interface, which is really interesting.
So you said money-wise. Is money involved as well?
Money can be involved depending on the company's wishes or budget. It allows you to basically earn points that can then be used internationally for reward options, things like swag or gift cards or live events, concert tickets.
That's interesting. Imagining that you are on a performance review and then there's already your formal feedback, and then you can pull it up what other colleagues are telling you in a more informal way about your performance, on your attitude in the company, or the help that you've provided with them, and that count for the performance review conversation, in fact.
Yeah, it makes the manager's life a lot easier. They don't have to go figure out what's the things that you've done well. I mean, really, all information should be already in the performance review, ready to go when the manager goes in to review it, right? They shouldn't have to collect that information. Just like AI agents are helping, insurance collect information, and then the human provides the analysis, right? The manager shouldn't have to be running around trying to find, X number of employees information. So yes, with something like Recognize, if those wins are being recorded in our platform, then when it comes time for performance review, that information is already there using AI to summarize it.
AI is involved as well.
Yes, it doesn't have to be, but it allows you basically to summarize a recognition program. For instance, we just did our quarterly review. We had our team got all together here in Washington in the mountains as an offsite last week, and then we were able to do our quarterly review meeting together. I was able to take the recognition information of all my team sending recognitions for the last quarter, and then present that data to the team. Here's the values of the employees, right? How much is our value showing up in the recognitions? And you can do this at a group level or an individual level.
You were an engineer for several years before dedicating to building this app. What drove you to create Recognize? Was it like a good example of recognition or bad examples and you wanted to do better?
Well, a funny story was actually I was in high school, and not to date myself, but my friends and I were driving to the mall. There was a truck and it said, how's my driving? Call this number. You probably have everyone has seen the trucks they have in the back, how's my driving? Call the number. And so, as like a funny joke, I just called the number with my friends in the car, and I said how amazing the driver was doing, how they're doing such a great job driving, so safe, et cetera, et cetera. Forgot all about it. We had a good laugh. 6 months later, I got a phone call. And it's around Christmas time, and it was the driver. It was the driver that I called on, and he said he just came from a holiday party. He got an award because he was the first only person to ever get positive feedback from that number. And I just loved that experience. I thought it was hilarious. He was so thankful to me, and then I went on to go to college, and I studied psychology. There's a lot of kind of the backstory on why I did that rather than software engineering. But I went into psychology and I studied a lot on positive reinforcement and the powers of positive reinforcement. And then fast forward to a few years later, I was working at a design agency and they had a recognition program. They created one around the values of the company and they just built it themselves. And it was, really fun. We would recognize each other all month. And then at the end of the month, we'd all get beers and soda and snacks. And the gregarious, well-liked employee of the company would then read off the recognitions that had occurred, funny stats that he would come up with. He would say things like the word awesome was used 60 times and the word terrible was used 0 times, like funny things like that. And it was really fun. I had a great time. And after that, I went to San Francisco. I moved to San Francisco from my hometown of Seattle. And I worked at a tech company that didn't have that kind of culture, didn't have that fun vibe, right? And I saw the kind of lack of energy, lack of morale, the lack of productivity that was occurring. And I thought, it'd be really fun to, I had started a few businesses already. And I thought it'd be really fun to start at this point, enterprise software, B2B software, where we provide recognition, systematic recognition, just like a design studio, and taking principles from psychology. So that's how I started Recognize.
In general, what are the most effective ways to use gamification to reinforce key behaviors and drive performance?
Well, what gamification does is it really analyzes motivation. What you're doing is you're looking at motivation, what drives motivation, and how to drive more of it, right? So gamification is essentially making work like play. When you're playing, you're in the flow state, right? And when you're in that state of excellence, that state of flow, that's when you're being the most productive. When you start working and come back to the clock and it's 10:30, right? And so, obviously we're not trying to trick people into doing things with leaderboards or whatever, but it does make the work environment more fun and more exciting. And then that will induce more flow state, more, you want to ask your employees on Sunday night, are you excited to go to work the next day? Right? They found that employees who are excited to go to work, who are basically not dreading going to work Sunday night, are the most successful employees throughout the week, right? They're most productive. And so you want to create an environment where people want to come to work. And this is especially useful when people have to do things like work is work. Sometimes work is not fun. And sometimes work is monotonous, depending on your role, right? Some of our customers, they have employees who install portable toilets, right? This is hard work. We have a lot of nurses. We work with employees who work with children who are dying, right? We need to make those people's work environment absolutely the best situation possible. And when you feel recognized, if we're motivating people to recognize somebody, you have lower mental health issues. It's why you leave a company. You leave a company oftentimes because you're not seen in the organization. So gamification then drives people to do these behaviors that may not seem. And also, I want to say one other thing about gamification is it's really also really important to look at the triggers of motivation, because it's not just your salary, right? It could be status, your job title. It could be access to different types of permissions, or maybe conferences, the power to make a decision, right? So there's different kinds of ways to motivate people and help people feel seen and connect to the workforce.
What are the must-haves for a successful, sustainable recognition program?
The must-haves, no matter what you do, is there's leadership buy-in into the program. If leadership never talks about it, right? They don't bring it up. They don't mention recognitions in the town hall or in that newsletter. It's not embedded into the performance review, right? Managers should be measured on, are they recognizing their employees, right? If we're not celebrating the wins of the company, how do we know if we're then promoting those types of behaviors? If we're just reprimanding people for not doing good work, we're just living in a state of fear. So we need to have a program that has company buy-in, right? And the second must-have is that it's integrated into your workflow. We cannot have yet another tab, another login for something that you don't absolutely feel like you have to do. Managers and other employees are trying to protect their time, right? 70% of company-wide emails from leadership aren't read, right? So that's why you need to be able to have it like, in Microsoft Teams, in Slack, right?
Right.
It needs to be absolutely accessible. Otherwise, it won't be adopted. So again, leadership buy-in, accessibility.
If you reinforce that accessibility, how do you make sure that you just kudos me and I kudos you all day? Like tomorrow, I kudos you again, you kudos me, and we have in the end of the month like 30 recognitions done to each other. How do you control that from a product perspective?
Is that a problem? Is that something that you need to be worried about, right? In comparison to not having anything at all, right? Where there's no wins being celebrated. You're always going to have a few people. Also, sometimes people only work with one other person,
Mhm.
right? And so it's very hard to recognize people who you don't really work with. You have to really go above and beyond to try to be like, trying to find things that people do who you don't directly work with. But there can be, let's say, favoritism in the way that we have it set up so that you can make it so that you can't send that badge to that employee more than a certain number of times a month, right? Or you have a points budget that, it's not really, depending on the role, it's not so much you need everyday recognition, right? It's more like a weekly or even more monthly activity. I personally will batch recognitions. I'll send four recognitions in one sitting, right? Because that's the moment I'm inspired to recognize everybody. But yeah, you always will have people who are recognizing people. We are looking into using AI to control kind of things like that. But we just found our most successful customers are the ones that are kind of thinking more around holistically, how can we make this really awesome rather than trying to catch the two or three people who are sending each other recognitions. But again, we have a lot of controls around points and access that can limit how many recognitions are being sent in general.
How can organizations use behavioral science then to promote safety and well-being among workers?
Yeah, I mean, it's great, especially at frontline companies or manufacturing, safety, or healthcare. That's why we have actually a set of we use badges on our program, right? So you can go online on our website in manufacturing section of our website or the healthcare section of our website, and we have badges for around safety and quality control, things like that. We also have a program called Challenges that ties into what you're saying, where you can report when you've had zero safety incidences in a month, right? And then you can get points from that. So it's not just waiting for someone to recognize you, it's also reporting the things that the company cares about. And again, that leads to points, which then can lead to rewards. So yeah, we like to not only and if you read the book The Power of Habit, right, by Charles Duhigg, the new CEO said, we're going to care about safety. That's our number one priority at this aluminum, factory, right, or corporation. We're going to care about safety. And actually, everyone sold their stock. Stock went down because the CEO cares about safety. Number one priority is safety, not revenue. But that created a ripple effect throughout the whole company. Like someone had a safety incident, he shut down the whole plant. Right? No funny business about safety anymore. And then that increased productivity, and their stock price skyrocketed. And so it's all about, again, behavioral science. It's all about the kind of clout behind what you're promoting, right? If the leadership really cares about it, you make a way that people can report when they are actually accomplishing these things. You will have a very productive company.
I'm imagining that this could be especially important in highly turnover industries because it creates a genuine recognition plan to retain top talent. Does it work especially well in those environments?
Exactly. I mean, I was talking to an executive and he was saying how much he cared about productivity. And then we dived into that. And what he was really saying was he cares about keeping his highly productive employees, right? To be a productive company is keeping your productive employees around. But yeah, high turnover environments, oftentimes, those are, things like call centers, security guards, um, in the medical staff as well, nurses. And so, yes, I mean, there's kind of two types of customers we work with. Ones that have like really dedicated to a mission. They love their employees. Maybe they already have a recognition program, but now they're in multiple locations, so they need something like Recognize. They're like great place to work type companies, right? Then there's the other type of companies we work with who are like oil and gas and like healthcare or like I said, security, where they have high turnover. And then so if they can just move that needle 5%, it's a no brainer. Anything they can do to move their don't have to constantly be rehiring. Anything they can do around that is a huge win for them.
As a reminder, I've left the links in the video description for Recognize app and for Alex's profile as well. So if you're starting to be interested in exploring the platform, feel free to click there and see where the conversation takes. But Alex, imagine that there's a company starting to think about these topics, or someone looked on YouTube about this topic and found this video. Before investing in a solution, can you share some creative, low-cost strategies that have worked to keep employees engaged and connected before entering full throttle into a platform?
Yeah, there's some really cool things you can do now, especially with AI. You can just generate simple apps or do connections. If you're in Microsoft Teams, you can have forms, like through Microsoft Forms. You create a form. That form is, connected into Microsoft 365 that can go through Copilot, which then could be sent to an Excel spreadsheet, right? And it can then be posted to Microsoft Teams. So all the apps now, especially in certain ecosystems, or if you're not a Microsoft company, maybe you use Zapier, or Google and Google plus Zapier, for instance, you can connect apps together, and it's not rocket science. You can really figure it out if you're not familiar with the things I'm saying. You can learn, and AI can help you teach you how to do it too. But just having a mechanism that's in the tools that people already use, that they can submit a recognition, and then you make it easy for the executives to pick maybe the recognition of the month, right? Or maybe you have 2 or 3 company values, and you have the executive pick. You give them like 2 or 3 choices per recognition. You can have it summarized with AI to get that information out, have the executive pick it, and then you post on, hey, on Slack or Teams at the end of the month, here's the employees of the month based off of the recognition values, based off of our company values and the executives. And that's basically free. That's almost or close to being very free. You may want to give a little money as a reward. We also do random. Another good one is pulling out in the data the random sender of the month. Right? Because it's like a raffle. It's almost like if you send a recognition, you're entered into a raffle. That's another way to have a really affordable program where you're not allowing everybody to give out $5, $10 a month, right? $20 a month. Maybe managers in some programs can give out $100 a month, right? Whereas in this example, this is a raffle, right? If you send a recognition, you're entered into the raffle, you can be the random winner of the month, and you can get $20, $50 from that. Right. So these are really simple things you can do to get started.
Thanks, Alex. And I hope that the effort that you're putting in building Recognize app really brings that value into companies for recognition to happen, and for people that spend their time in silence and that it's not visible for managers or executives to have that path or that visibility of good work of anyone in the company, regardless of position and seniority.
Thanks so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Enjoy your day. Goodbye.